Look at y'all sitting up here with no masks on.
I know. Yeah. Nice to see
It's the first day. Wait a minute now. So I'm talking, and in my mind I'm going, what is different about this audience?
See people's faces.
And then it hits me. No mask, because I saw your smile and I saw your teeth. I was like, great. Well, yeah, we're getting back to where we were.
All right, guys, so as the GOP passes more laws, more common sense laws across the country to protect women's sports, to protect kids from being physically or chemically castrated before the age of consent, to protect kids from being indoctrinated in school or being exposed to male strippers, the left is melting down, okay? They are sounding the alarm on the alleged bigotry, the alleged anti-LGBTQ homophobia, transphobia, coming from the Republican Party towards the LGBTQ community, right? This is what they're saying, okay? When the reality is that, again, common sense is now hate, okay? And you're having meltdowns like this one right here, the one from Mulvaney, that I'm going to show you guys, that is happening in response, in which the person is claiming that the GOP is forcing kids to detransition.
Hi, it's day 357 of being a girl, and we haven't caught up in a while. So much happening this week, a lot of positive things, but it feels a little odd to sit back and celebrate trans joy when there's so much hurt and hatred in the trans community right now. And while I've taken steps forward this year, it feels like society has taken 100 steps backwards, and we are so in the thick of it. And I kept thinking that all this transphobia and anti-trans legislation was just gonna go away, and that it was like Voldemort's last dying breath, like, I hate trans people, and then it would end. But it's actually gotten stronger. And we have kids being forced to detransition, drag is getting banned. But the most shocking part is that they are now saying that trans people are child predators. And I don't know about you, but to me, that is one of the most serious accusations someone can make. And yet it's being thrown around so lightly for an entire group of people. Like, hello? I see these comments on my posts that are like, stay away from my kid, you're a groomer, pedophile, and I can't even believe I have to say this right now.
Yeah, welcome to the real world. When you are a public figure, okay, like myself, right? I happen to be black, okay? This person happens to be transgender, and I'm called all types of racial slurs all the time. Sellout, Sambo, Tom, etc., etc., etc. Okay, you don't see me coming online and having a meltdown over the hatred towards black conservatives, at least not on a daily basis, right? Sometimes I may make a video and say, hey, you guys see the left and how they treat black conservatives, even though they claim that they love black people so much. But it's not something where I'm out here boohoo whining and crying about it on a daily basis. It just kind of comes with the territory. Doesn't make it right. Clearly it's wrong, but that's the internet, okay? People are going to say mean things to you in the comment section. Happens to me all the time. Now, again, that doesn't mean that just because you're trans that you're some type of predator. I would never say that. I haven't heard any mainstream conservative commentator say that. Also, kids, I don't think are being forced to detransition unless you count the bans on so-called gender-affirming healthcare, which I guess technically, I guess you could say they're being forced to detransition, but they should have been transitioning in the first place, and drag shows aren't being banned, right? So again, what's happening here is that the left is extrapolating the common sense pushback from the right against the extremism that is coming from the left in regards to pushing some of this stuff on children, and they're trying to say that, again, this is some type of hate and bigotry towards trans people in general in the LGBTQ community. Take, for example, this meltdown here from The View in defense of kids being allowed to go to drag shows, in which, again, they're going to try to extrapolate this as the GOP being hateful bigots because they don't want kids to be exposed to male strippers. Take a look.
When he's saying, I'm your warrior, I think he's saying, I'm your warrior, not fighting. Everybody. He's fighting. I'll tell you who he's fighting.
People,
no, let me answer you. He's fighting transgenders.
Drag queens.
He's fighting drag queens. He's fighting, they're fighting black history. They're fighting truth. They're fighting facts. They're fighting science. That's what they're fighting.
But no, people are in power.
Yeah, but I think that doesn't matter, Sonny. It's about manufactured culture wars. It's not about logic. It's let's make things up that enrage people, that aggrieve people, that piss people off, that make them feel oppressed, that make them feel like victims.
Fear of a loss of power?
And I'm going to make them feel that I'm going to fight for them. And Ron DeSantis is saying the same thing. And there was something, the entire Republican Party, because it's happening in so many states, is taking this manufactured culture war way too far. This is now the train they're on, right? Let's go after transgender people. Let's go after LGBTQ. And it's going to wind up getting somebody hurt. And it needs to stop. And listen, if you are against your children going to a drag show, don't take your children to a drag show. No 5-year-old can drive themselves. And the #1 cause of death in children is firearms. So if you really are concerned about your children and their security, pass some common sense gun reform and leave the drag queens the hell alone.
But it's still about power. It's a fear of a loss of power. I don't know. We've never had Caitlyn Jenner as the president. We've never had a transgender president. We've had a black president. I think that's what caused
ignorance and fear
white labs
coming for your kids. They being insert name, like anybody
immigrants,
other
black people,
than
Spanish people, other people than white people. It's a fear of a loss of white power, and I think we need to call it what it is.
I do think this is the high water mark point. Is I don't think that's the majority of the country. I don't think the majority of this country wakes up in fear of drag queens or the transgender community. I don't.
But there's laws passing dozens of states now. It's not just Florida. It's not just CPAC.
Please remember that all the people who are yelling for their rights and their rights and their rights are pooping all over everybody else's rights. Yeah. 18-year-olds can go into bars. 7-year-olds can't go into bars unless your kid is with you. You can't go anywhere without a parent. This is ridiculous. And, as I think Sonny just said, nobody has ever killed anybody with a drag queen. But guns kill people all the time.
Guys, it's so hilarious how disingenuous this conversation is, okay? Because, they bring on a conservative or alleged conservative, Alyssa Farah Griffin. I don't know anything conservative about her, who doesn't actually give an accurate representation of the conservative viewpoint on this situation and what's going on, because the conservative argument is not that anybody's trying to ban transgenders. Okay, I've never heard anybody say, hey, I'm trying to ban people from being transgender. Like, straight up, I'm not going to allow you to be a transgender person. And that's not to say there may not be one or two, commentators out here who may have said that. And in particular, we got to talk about Michael Knowles and some of the comments that he said, in which he basically said he wanted to eradicate transgender ideology from public space, which, in my opinion, the way I interpret that is, hey, he wants to basically ban transgender ideology. Now, again, he didn't put it in a way that was very eloquent, but I don't think that he said he wanted to ban transgender people. Okay, banning the ideology, I don't think is the same thing as banning transgender people. But is that any worse than saying you want to abolish police? Right? Because if you're going to use that type of extrapolation, I guess when the left says we need to abolish police, maybe that means they want to get rid of all police officers. Now, do they mean that they want to kill all police officers? Again, if you want to use the extrapolation that the left commonly uses against the right, I guess maybe that's what that means. Okay, when the left says they want to abolish police, maybe that's what they actually mean. But I'm not going to go that far to say that that's what they actually mean. Okay, as much as they say, hey, well, we want to abolish the system of policing. And I mean, look, speaking of CPAC, drag queens are more accepted at CPAC than people like Nick Fuentes, who got kicked out of CPAC for just being Nick Fuentes, for being too far right. And drag queens were allowed at CPAC. Ain't it funny how that works? And a lot of people may not necessarily agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it just proves my point on how silly some of these talking points are for the mainstream liberal media. But you got Fox News, which is the largest conservative media network. Okay, they're part of Legacy Media. They have transgenders on their network, right? They have Caitlyn Jenner as a contributor for the network. They also have gay people as contributors for their network. Okay, they've had people from the LGBTQ community be contributors on air for the network. They're not banning drag shows, right? There's nobody that came out and said, hey, we should ban drag shows in general. And nobody's attacking any transgender person or any person in the LGBTQ community that is not actively trying to push their gender or sexual ideology on children. It's not happening. It's not happening. Okay? And when I mean by attack, I mean like verbally criticizing them, right? We know they're actually not being attacked in real life. That's not happening. And I want to talk about that real quick because it's funny. They say, well, it's going too far, right? It's going too far. Somebody's going to get hurt. But, you know, it's funny how I never heard this when the left and they used their extremist rhetoric against police officers during the race riots of 2020. Okay, because in 2022, about 64 police officers were murdered. Okay, murdered. More so than ever before, right? In the post-George Floyd era, being a police officer is more dangerous than ever because of anti-police violence, because of anti-police sentiment that has happened in this country, that's been fomented in this country by people on the radical left, right? Never heard anything from the view about how, oh, this is going too far, right? This is crazy. This is out of control. This needs to stop, right? Never heard anything about it when you had people actively destroying and rioting in cities, ruining people's lives, and in some cases, people getting killed, losing their lives. Never heard, oh, the rhetoric's going too far. If anything, I heard that the rhetoric wasn't going far enough, okay? Against police, against the system, against the white man. I never heard about the rhetoric going too far. But you know how many transgender people were killed in 2022? You know how many? Approximately 38. 38. So I want y'all to understand, there were more police officers that were killed in the line of duty in 2022 than transgender people murdered or killed. And you don't hear anybody talking about how anti-police rhetoric, anti-police violence in this country is going too far. And there's estimated about 1.6 million people in the United States that identify as transgender. There's about 660,000 police officers. So you're much more likely to be killed as a police officer or simply for being a police officer than you are for simply being trans. And, you know, being transgender, getting killed, a lot of times it has nothing really to do with you being trans as much as it has to do with some type of personal conflict that you had with somebody else, just like anybody else being killed who's non-trans would have probably to do with some type of personal conflict. You're much more likely to be killed as a police officer than you are as a transgender person. But again, you didn't hear we need to tone down on this rhetoric, right? We need to stop demonizing police officers like this. We never heard that. It's amazing how that works. It's amazing how this group of people have basically convinced the mainstream liberal media that they're somehow under attack when the evidence and data does suggest it's just simply not the case. It's just not true. Words does not mean that you are being harmed in the real world, right? That's not real world harm and violence, right? It doesn't equal that, okay? And again, the rhetoric, the actual rhetoric from the right is not being directed at trans people. Nobody cares about trans people existing in general, right? I'm not saying that trans people can't exist. If you want to be trans, cool. I'm a libertarian when it comes to adults. I don't care, okay? But we still need to have common sense laws in regards to how we orient ourselves in society, and that should be based off biological sex. I don't think that's an anti-trans position. That's just a pro-common sense position, right? I also don't think that kids should be exposed to this ideology and this lifestyle before the age of 18. I don't understand what is so anti-trans or anti-LGBTQ about that. I think that's just common sense. Just like I don't think that kids should be exposed to, straight propaganda, right? Or, any type of sexual or gender ideology, period, before the age of 18. I'm just saying. That there's nothing controversial about that. The people that are making it controversial are the people that really do believe that kids should be allowed to attend drag shows. Now, again, is every drag show super sexual? No, they're not. But I don't think it's appropriate for kids to be allowed to sit around and to interact with men wearing dresses. And we have seen some drag shows that have gotten sexual in nature, where we have seen kids, babies, be exposed to this type of stuff. We have laws on the books that are supposed to protect kids from this type of obscenity, right? We have laws on the books for that. This is not anything new. This is just common sense. The backlash that we're seeing is not against the LGBTQ community in general or the trans community in general. It's about a specific subset of people who believe that this type of ideology and that are pushing that agenda on children. That's what it's about, because this existed for a long time, right? Transgender people, LGBTQ people have existed for a long time. And it has never been as big of a deal as it is today because they weren't pushing it on kids the way that some people are pushing it on kids today. They weren't doing it. So there was no backlash. Once you got it now, so it's in school, kids are going to drag shows, it's everywhere in society. Yeah, there's going to be pushback because people are like, yo, this is too much. You're going too far with this. When it was relegated to being in this little circle where only adults were exposed to it, nobody cared. Nobody cared. But again, takes like this from The View tells you exactly what these people are for. And if they had an actual real conservative on the panel, the conservative would call out people like Anna Navarro and Sunny Holston and ask them a simple question. So you're for drag queens being able to perform for kids. In some cases, you have strip shows where, again, you have sexual performers performing sexually in front of kids. You're for that. You think that's cool. You're fine with adult content being in school, right? You're fine with pornography being in school. Are you cool with that? You okay with that? Is that what you support? Yes or no? If they had a strong conservative on the show, that is the question that needs to be asked. But no, they're allowed to sit here and to have these straw man arguments, to present these disingenuous arguments about what conservatives are actually outraged over and spin it as, well, they just hate LGBTQ and trans people in general. Well, it's simply not the case. It's not the case. Again, a lot of these people, the mainstream liberal, they're really showing themselves for what they support. And I just pray to God that the average American can see through this nonsense in regards to what these people are for and what they're okay with children being exposed to. This really shouldn't even be political as much as it should be about just basic morality. But unfortunately, because we live in an ultra politicized world, it doesn't matter what the subject is. If one side supports it, another side has to be against it no matter what, right? Even if, again, morally, I think most people in a common sense world should be on the same page when it comes to this issue. This should be a non-issue. Should be a non-issue. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.